Hey y'all, it's Nolan, and welcome to this special episode of The Most Disturbing Films of All Time. When you look at any articles or lists of disturbing films, or more recently the whole iceberg thing that has seemed to get a new generation of people interested in this kind of stuff, there will often be disputes and confusion on the types of films included. Even my list for this series includes some entries that share little in common with the others. And this can be a sticking point for a lot of communities. Some forums, subreddits, Discord servers, meetups, etc. for disturbing films will straight up ban someone for mentioning something like Faces of Death. And on the other hand, many underground and gore communities will rain down great ridicule if something fictional like Serbian film is brought up to them. As this series continues, it's going to become increasingly important to understand how these different types of film work and relate to each other. After 20 years of absorbing some of the most mind-shatteringly horrifying images ever recorded with an enthusiasm that is definitely not indicative of something that would be better handled through speaking to a psychiatric professional rather than to continue to consume the media with an unflinching scrutiny and then spending weeks of my life making videos where I share my analysis to strangers on the internet, I've come up with 4.5 categories that hopefully can help you better navigate this world of depraved media with more confidence. So whether you're a total newbie or have been in the scene for decades, here are my categories of disturbing film. Category 1 is the place for standard fictional films. These films are just normal movies with writers, directors, actors, etc. presenting fiction or at most a dramatization of real events, just like any other film. There's fundamentally no distinction between the films in Category 1 and something like Batman, except for how disturbing they are. And they, generally speaking, garner this disturbing moniker through the type of content the story includes and the extent to which it's graphically depicted. I'm pretty sure I've used that exact phrase before. The concepts explored in the movie and the extent to which they're graphically depicted, things like Serbian film, are in Category 1. Category 2 is very similar to Category 1 in that these films are also, for all intents and purposes, regular movies. Where they differ is that these films present in whole or in part real footage of horrifying things, usually meaning real footage of assault, death, gore, and the like. But these are still traditional films because this footage is presented through the framing device of documentary. This is a realm of true crime docs, shockumentaries, and mondo films. And although the content is generally speaking real footage, and that is why these films get called disturbing, the choice of a documentary style presentation makes the films in Category 2 still technically movies. Faces of Death would be in Category 2. As an aside, most people would probably put 102 Minutes That Changed America into this category as well, though there is an argument to actually put that one in a later category, weirdly enough. It's important to note that some of these films straddle the lines. In Category 3, we have the kinds of films that my list doesn't include, and I call these accidentally disturbing. These are usually traditional films, or at least films that can fit into the tropes of a certain genre, but they usually don't actually intend to disturb the viewer. These movies might have elements of horror, but are primarily meant to be something else. Most of the notable or infamous films that fit into this category are pornography, usually centering around niche fetishes and intense paraphilia, such as emetophilia and coprophagia. That's why I call these accidentally disturbing, because these are not meant to upset the intended audience. Ultimately, there's nothing functionally different between one of these films and that tape you'd steal from the back of your older brother's sock drawer. Does that still make sense to anyone under like 30? However, they gain the status of disturbing due to the fact that the fetishes and paraphilias presented are incredibly violent, disgusting to 99% of the world, or both. Category 3 includes things like slaughtered vomit dolls and tumbling doll of flesh. Also, technically roar fits here since it is meant to be a comedy, but that's an outlier. This is the half category that I really only include due to the way the internet has wildly shifted how we experience media. This half category includes the gore videos and other viral online shock videos that have been around and continue to sprout up over the last couple decades. And they disturb for the same reasons that Category 2 and 3 do. Now, these are not by any meaningful definition films, and even the ones that are proper productions are merely shorter segments or clips taken from films, some of which might even fit into the previous categories. But they are worth mentioning, one, because they do get thrown around on the same lists and icebergs, and so they've become part of the conversation, and two, because they make up the backbone of the next category. Things like Two Girls, One Cup, BME Pain Olympics, and many others fit into this half category. Starting back over 20 years ago, mixtapes are a product of the tape and DVD trading communities within the extreme and underground cinema world. Mixtapes usually feature spliced together compilations or montages of footage from various sources fitting into some theme. They could be moments of humor from independent comedies, moments of hilariously bad special effects from underground horror, or, as is relevant to this series, various clips of disgusting fetish porn and violence and gore. Now with mixtapes, we're starting to push the bounds of what we define as films. However, this is a category I said 102 minutes is straddling into, because the line between a compilation of footage and a documentary can be difficult to find, and basically just amounts to how much narration and commentary you add. Films in this category usually carry the air of mystique more than any other type, as they can be difficult to get a hold of, and very few people have the stomach to even start them, let alone get through the entirety of one. Numerous reaction videos and even urban legends have sprung up around some of these titles, but we'll be getting into that in way more detail when we get to those films on the list. The mixtapes here are disturbing for obvious reasons. They're basically just multiple hours-long catalogs of the exact things that would be in our previous half category of videos. And at least for me, as a musician, a lot of these also have the added disturbing nature of being set to just absolutely garbage hardcore punk or grindcore metal that's just... Look, if you make mixtapes of this type, I'm speaking to you personally here. No one wants to hear your asshole roommate's terrible band. You're making these mixtapes actively harder to watch and not in the way that you want. Examples of Category 4 films would be MD Pope and How to Clear a Room in 90 Minutes or Less. So those are the 4.5 categories of disturbing films as I can best describe them. I'm covering at least something from all but one of these categories on our initial disturbing films list, and if someone requested it, I guess I'd be forced to look into the other category as well. The important thing here is that the most disturbing films in one category are going to be very different from those in another, and generally I think it's unfair to pit them against each other without giving that context. For this series, I chose to forego any separation for the specific purpose of exploring the diversity of what is called the most disturbing. But in most other cases, I think it's better to make clear what type of film you're talking about. Well, I hope this special episode of the most disturbing films of all time was helpful. Make sure to subscribe if you want to catch the next episode of the main series, and thanks for watching.